Welcome back to Art and Actuality. As you can see behind me there is a supermoon, and we are going to do some more reading on the cancel. So I'm going to pick a chapter and we're just going to kind of dive deep and talk a little bit about the concepts and the ideas in there, and I'm looking forward to it. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to read some of the cancel proof copy that I'm still reading through for errors, and I'm just going to kind of dive into one of the chapters and we'll talk a little bit in depth about it here. So, choosing the unknown. Do I want to live a life that's marked only by things that I did reluctantly? Ask this question to yourself, and if your answer is no, then it's time to re-embrace the cancel. Next month marks the start of a new school year. I could have gone back to my comfortable job with a comfortable wage and a familiar setting. After submitting somewhere near 200 or more applications, I'm now going into an entirely different area of education. It is also in an area in which I have very little experience. I'd rather do that than continue going forward in the same direction and being out of alignment with what I feel is important to not compromise on. The things that matter the most to me are loyalty, mutual appreciation, and honoring one another's commitments. None of those things were being done in the last teaching job I was in. In fact, none of those things are done in any job or public social situation, I would argue. I don't care. I choose the cancel. I choose to boldly go forward towards the life I don't know that's ahead of me. I don't want to live a life that's devoid of any purpose or meaning, so I choose the opposite, no matter what the cost. So what does it mean to live a life that's devoid of any purpose or meaning? That would probably mean resigning yourself to a fate that maybe is something that you just feel is something you have to do. And there's no shame in that. Like, if you're doing things because you feel you're obligated to people that you care about, then there's good reason for that. But at the same time, if you're living your life in a way that's not in alignment with who you really want to be, you have to realize that you're only going to be here for a set amount of years, and then you are going to die. Around that time, you'll have the chance to reflect back on your life and decide, did I live the life that I wanted to live, or that I'm happy with? Or am I glad that I lived the life that I lived? Or was it worth it, right? Or you might ask yourself something like, this whole life that I've lived, if I could go back and do it the same, would I do it the same? And I think for a lot of us, the answer might even still be yes, even if it wasn't what we wanted. But basically the idea that I'm getting at is that you don't want to live a life where you regret focusing on certain things because you realize later that other things mattered more, right? And I think a lot of us feel like we don't have a choice. A lot of us feel like if we don't do things the way that we're doing them, that it would not lead to a good outcome, and that there is no other choice for us to make, right? That's not what I'm trying to say in this book. I'm trying to say that there are other choices. They're often difficult choices, and they often come with consequences that leave us in a situation that make us wonder if we should have chosen what it was that we wanted, or been brave enough to choose something that we might have been more happy with, right? A lot of times people will not choose that, and they feel 100% justified in that decision because they truly believe that there are no other options. I have a lot of different ways of looking at that. I kind of think that if you're going to do something other than, just the conventional thing, whatever that is, some 9 to 5 that everyone else is choosing, maybe you take a sales job and you work your way up and you become a manager, and maybe you become like a regional manager or something, right? And you get a pretty good salary and you keep that job until you retire. Like, that's kind of like a conventional job. Or maybe you get a degree in finance and you go and you work in finance, or something of that nature, where you actually have a guaranteed job at the end of it, right? Like, that's pretty much the norm, and that's pretty much the safe route that a lot of people choose. But what happens when you get laid off? You may take a huge cut in income if it's a job that's completely dependent on promotions that you got for that position. So that's just one example of a situation where life can pull the rug out from under someone, or they can get so engulfed in their career that they do it until they're in their elderly years and they really don't have any meaningful connections. So those are very common things that happen to a lot of people, and they don't really get a chance to look back and realize that they regretted those things until much later. So that's kind of what the cancel is all about. It's about being brave enough to make decisions that might kind of screw you a little bit in the short term. And the reason why you make those decisions is because sometimes you can pick up the steam that you may have lost by making a decision that kind of sets you back a little bit. and be more fulfilled and possibly even gain more ground in the long run if you really are passionate and you stick to what it is that you truly desire to do. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. It's also just about focus and motivation and people in your life, situations in your life, because a lot of times we get kind of more or less enmeshed in different situations out of obligation, out of guilt, a lot of times just out of fear, because we don't want to experience how much worse we perceive things might get if we don't do the things that we think we should do and that are the safe bet, right? So the cancel is more about, if you're wanting to pursue something and things are holding you back, if people in your life are just discouraging, if there's a lot of drama, things like that, if you're in any situations that really aren't giving you any return, those are the kinds of situations that are basically what I'm talking about when I'm saying they're what needs to be canceled. And the reason why, I'm holding up my book here, the reason why we want to cancel those things is because if we don't, we'll spend not only, days, weeks, months, or even years, possibly, well, let's just put it this way. We can spend long periods of time stuck because we don't cancel certain situations. And I'm not saying you should get rid of people in your life who are close to you, because you may need them more than you think. I am not saying that you should throw away relationships and connections that you have. Absolutely not. I am not saying that you should cut ties with long-term friends who mean a lot to you, and maybe you have a role that you need to play in their life. And I talk about this in some of the sections in the book. But what I am saying is, if there's something where you can disengage from it, free up some of your time and put your time and your efforts elsewhere. What's going to happen is you're actually going to gain traction in an area of your life that you may not have previously thought you would actually gain any ground in. And why do I say that? Well, it could come in the form of a career that you maybe are afraid to pursue, and you can take some small steps towards that and see if you can kind of cause some movement to happen in that area. It could be a creative pursuit, something that you really like doing, but you just don't feel like you have the time to do, right? You can actually take some time and actually put it towards that. For me, I'm a musician, right? I play in multiple different projects. If I'm able to free up any time at all, then I can actually do things like work on music that I actually wrote, or try to do some kind of a showcase or something to show that, recording music, things like that. Or if I'm doing art or photography, if I'm doing a business, I have a nonprofit and I have a business. So both of those things require a ton of time. And if I don't put the time in, I don't get much in return. And as it currently stands, because I've been a teacher for the last few years, I've devoted most of my time to that and done little music projects on the side, more or less for little extra income or for fun or whatever. And all the things that I might have worked on for my business, my nonprofit, or any of my art are kind of a little bit stagnant. Not the art so much, because I've done a lot with art. I've actually made a lot of photography to the point where I could almost do an exhibit, so that's kind of cool. And I wrote this book, which is has been a great use of my time. This has been time that I've carved out for myself. I was spending more of this time on excessive music projects, which I did kind of scale back on, and it helped me to have the time to do this. As a matter of fact, the week that I finished the cancel, I wasn't even able to go to the gym. I don't think I even went to the gym one time that week, which is, not the norm for me. I'm usually every single day or every other day I go to the gym. I try to make sure that I keep myself fit and I keep myself together, especially when I was teaching and coaching sports. So that was a departure from what I was usually doing, and I had to make that sacrifice. I had to cancel, at least temporarily, going to the gym just so I could finish this book. And now that's done, and now I can jump back on that. And I don't know if I talked about this concept in this book, but there is this thing called the peripheral, where you don't necessarily place something completely on the back burner, but you put it aside until you're able to pick it up again. And the reason why is because you don't have to quit something just because you don't have time for it. You can put it aside. Some people call that putting it on the back burner. I don't, because the back burner is where you have something that's basically been pushed behind you and you're not really planning on picking it up anytime soon. I call it the peripheral because what you do is you put it aside, and then when you really have the time, when you truly have the time, it could be a while, but it may be a short while, right? Like in this case, I'm back in the gym again now because I finished the cancel, right? So But I'm able to free up the time, and I guess that's the concept I'm getting at. And I know that that's just basic time management. It's motivation. It's, maybe some people would say it's common sense, but there's also this saying, and I'm not even going to say it. It has something to do with common sense and how common it truly is, right? Okay. I don't even believe in there being a such thing as common sense. And you want to know why? Because everybody doesn't think the same. People really don't. And that's one of the reasons that you need to think differently. Because people may think similarly in a lot of ways, but it's really not the same. And a lot of times, if you go looking for advice, you're going to be talking to people who really don't have a sense of direction. They may feel certain about certain things, but they don't really have a very exact point of view on things to where they're very specific and they really know truly all the details that they need to know to be able to give you good advice, right? What do? You want to go down a path where you're actually determining for yourself what it is that you want. And if you want to understand something, you need to go and investigate it and understand it for yourself. Why? Because you're the only one who's going to be as invested as you need to be in whatever it is that matters to you. And no one else with their flippantly given advice is going to be able to tell you what it is that you should do with absolute certainty. If you're going by anyone else's advice or their thoughts or opinions, they're usually half-baked. And that's why we want to cancel that. And we want to truly devote ourselves to actually having something that is substantial, that is from a place of our own personal experience and a true, like a passionate desire to understand and know what it is that you're going to do, to understand it and to know where it is that you're going. So any kind of half-baked advice, any kind of, just any kind of groupthink kind of, I don't want to use negative words here, but any kind of low consciousness groupthink stuff, we want to cancel that. Why? Because it's going to leave us going around in circles. And that's what I did for so many years. I went around in circles, and I still feel like I'm kind of stuck in that pattern a little bit, but I'm recognizing my patterns. Part of me recognizing my patterns was literally writing this book and reading as I was editing it. I realized what a lot of my patterns were, and they weren't the positive patterns that I wanted. So what I did was I realized I can learn from my own reflections on these things, and I can change the patterns that I'm having. I can cancel the old, outdated patterns that are not serving me and that are leading me in circles. And I can start to forge a path that actually is based on things that are true in my experience, that I can verify. Not something that someone else says, because at the end of the day, if that is what you believe and you listen to and it leads you wrong, well, you only have yourself to blame. But you also allowed somebody else to influence you toward that. So that's something that I will leave you with, food for thought. And if you like this, you want to hear more from the council, go ahead and like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. Let me know how you feel about this. And this is going to be out soon on Amazon. I just have to read the rest of the way through it and mark down any spots that I see errors in, go back and fix those, hit the publish button, and this is going to be out there, and I'm going to start putting links on the videos. So cheers to more to come.